Hello class, this is 7.4, the Han Dynasty. When we take notes on this, it's assignment number 53. There are three main ideas for this section. The first, Han Dynasty government was based on the ideas of Confucius. 2, family life was supported and strengthened in Han China. 3, the Han made many achievements in art, literature, and learning. All right, so we're going to start with Liu Bang, one of the first emperors of the Han Dynasty. So the interesting thing about Liu Bang is he was a peasant before becoming emperor. That seems pretty crazy, right? You wouldn't expect a peasant, a poor farmer, to rise to the top, but he did. He became the first emperor of the Han Dynasty. He was well liked by soldiers and peasants, which is nice. He was liked by the people fighting his army, as well as we've talked about this. The peasants made up 90% of the population, so that'd be very important that he had their support. Liu Bang lowered taxes for farmers and made punishments less severe, which is in contrast to a previous ruler we looked at, Shi Huangdi, who was very, very strict. Liu Bang was kind of the opposite, so that was attractive as well in a leader. And he relied on elected officials to help him rule. He didn't expect himself to do everything, and he gave other people some rights and privileges and responsibilities to help him. I like this this picture to the right. Obviously looks like a Pokemon card, which is kind of silly, but you can see they've kind of detailed some of his key attributes. Peasant revolution, so it says Liu Bang and fellow peasants rise up against Qin and deals 100 damage. However, if wounded by a straight arrow, Liu Bang is too stubborn to be healed, so he dies instead. So there must be a story there. And peasant ruler, Liu Bang becomes the first emperor of the Han Dynasty. Liu deals 10 damage times the number of accomplishments he did. So, all right. So next we have years later, Emperor Wu Di, who took the throne and wanted a strong central government. He wanted the government to control a lot of the things going on in China. He took land from the lords, which we've heard of previous rulers. He raised taxes, so he did the opposite thing as Liu Bang, and controlled the food supply. And big with him was Confucianism. It was the official government philosophy. So the ideas of Confucius kind of drove the government. He wanted that to play a central role. Wealthy people could take a test on Confucianism to get a government job, which is why we have this picture of a Scantron. If you were wealthy enough, you could prepare to take this test, and it was on Confucianism, and that would give you a good job within the government. Let's take a look at this. Again, a Pokemon card of Emperor Wu Di. Confucianism. So Emperor Wu Di established Confucianism as China's official government policy, and stricter government. Lords must give up land, taxes are raised, and grain supply is now in control of the government. So same thing as I just mentioned. All right, next we have family life in Han China. So in Han China, the social classes were, you had the emperor and his court at the top. Below that, the peasants. So the peasants were right below the emperor and his court. Then you have artisans and then merchants at the bottom. And soldiers were kind of separate, but they were joining the army offered men a spot in government. So on this triangular sort of social class setup, you can see soldiers at the bottom, but they're kind of separate entirely. But what's interesting is merchants were at the bottom of the social classes because they didn't produce anything, they didn't make anything, they just traded stuff. So that's interesting. But social rank, as you see here, that did not determine your wealth. Just because you're further up to the top doesn't mean you were more wealthy or had more money than people at the bottom. And So peasants, who are third from the top, they were definitely still the most poor, but they were just, I guess, suppose they were respected more, but didn't mean they lived better or more comfortable lives. They didn't. They were poor. 90% of Han Chinese were peasants or farmers. They were often forced to work on building projects for the emperor, and not many farmers owned their own land. They farmed the land of wealthier folk. And you can see here to the right a picture of some farmers. And up top here, how the Great Wall was constructed. This goes with the whole idea of peasants being forced to work on building projects. You can see peasants there carrying bricks, laying sand, a soldier forcing them to do stuff, all that sort of thing. All right, Confucianism. So Confucianism has many ideas, and we talked about it a few sections ago, and we'll continue to talk about it, but just as a review, everyone was expected to respect their parents. Even the emperor who was at the very top, had the most power, they were expected to respect their parents as well. Within Confucianism, the father was the head of the family. You can see this picture of an old TV show with the father in the center. Women were expected to obey the men of the family, so they were expected to respect their fathers, and then when they got married, respect their husbands, and then when their husbands died, respect any sons they had. Confucianism was big on honoring dead family members, and we saw that in Mulan, when they were worshiping and sacrificing stuff to their ancestors, the people who lived before them and their family. And boys were more desirable than girls because they passed on the family name. Girls would marry another man and take on his name. So in Han China, boys were more desirable than girls, which is, this is thousands of years ago, but very different culture. And now on to some Han achievements. So they were expert figure paintings, They were expert figure paintings, which means figure painting is to paint people. So they painted very realistic scenes. They painted people very realistically. Han were known for their poetry, the Fu and Shi style specifically. And the Han Chinese invented paper, which is huge. It wasn't paper exactly as it is today, but it was closer than any previous civilizations. And they did that. You can see a picture here to the right. They kind of flattened fibrous plant materials into paper, and it was pasted together to make early forms of books. And a couple of more achievements we see here: the sundial, which is an early clock. You can see that in the top right. And the seismograph. I don't have a picture of a seismograph here, but that's a super important thing. A seismograph measures the strength of earthquakes. Here you see a picture on the top of a city before and after a major earthquake. They can be incredibly destructive. So the ability to read them, sometimes predict them, read how powerful they were, it's something to learn from for future earthquakes. So that was a huge technological advancement. And lastly, acupuncture was used to cure pain with fine needles in the skin to cure pain or cure diseases or relieve pain. It's kind of weird, but the idea of acupuncture, different points in the body, using these fine needles could cure pain, definitely, but sometimes even cure diseases or issues people had, sicknesses, and that sort of thing.